toward the island. Leo, you have to do something.
By the power of cherry pie.
Leo 5000 ready. Remember, kids, always wash your hands after washing your hands.
Thank you, Arrtx, for sponsoring this video. I wanted to make a dreamy illustration for this video since it's about dreams, and the pastel color palette that reminds me of candy really fits the vibes because I wanted to make something very whimsical and dreamy. So I hope you enjoy the illustration process of this. I'm really excited to use these markers in the future. So let's dive right into the topic of the video. Sup, fellow quacks? Do you have weird dreams?
Yes!
Are you someone that has a lot of OCs?
Yes!
Are you someone that wants to make OCs based on your dreams?
Yes!
Well, in this video, I'm going to give my tips on how I turn my dreams into inspiration for characters. So let's just dive right into it. So first things first, the most important thing to do is documentation. This is something that you also hear when people give advice on lucid dreaming. Always make sure to write down the information as soon as you wake up. So when you wake up, have something to write with next to you, like a sketchbook or a journal. You want to write down the most key elements that have happened. You won't be able to remember every little detail, but usually when you remember dreams, they tend to come in like fragments, and usually there's a cohesive narrative, but there's always going to be some things that you're going to forget once you wake up because dreams are just weird like that. So just write down everything. It doesn't have to make sense because that's the initial stage, is trying to just get everything out there. All the information just needs to be on the page or whatever, and then after that, this is where the fun part comes in. So this is where you analyze the moments that really stuck out to you for inspiration. Look at the key details that really like stuck to your brain, because those are the parts of the dreams that you're most likely going to remember, and because you're most likely going to remember them, you want to use them for OC inspiration. So let me show an example. So here's the example where I wrote out the dream that I had, where it was like the whole demon college cult thing, and as you can see, I just did everything in bullet points because it was easier to get all the information out rather than writing everything coherently. And as you can see, there was just a lot of stuff going on, a lot of information. You know, sometimes I just wrote stuff like nothing is making sense here if you're reading it. And then another note is to draw out like the stuff that you see in the dreams like initially, because you know, when you get inspiration, usually you'll see some sort of visual of the character. It's always a good idea to like doodle them at least after waking up, but make sure to do this when you're feeling more awake rather than like right after you wake up, because you're probably not going to have like the energy to do it. But yeah, this is like all the stuff from that dream. There's a little bit more, but yeah, I didn't really make these two into characters just because it was like a whole mess, but they didn't really inspire anything yet. It's always good to keep dream-based characters in the back of your mind if they don't inspire you initially, because they're always good as like characters for inspiration in the future, which is why it's always good to write them down. So that's another thing to note, is that dreams are very nonsensical. So when you write down all the information, you don't have to stick to anything if you don't want to. If like you're trying to piece this whole puzzle together of like, okay, so this happened and this happened, but they're not making any sense, you could do one of two things. You can either combine the ideas somehow and try to make it work, or you can take the idea that you really like more and just use that instead and keep the other idea for something else, or try to utilize it for like some other character unrelated, because sometimes it can be really hard to make dream plots work cohesively without like sacrificing what happened in the original dream, because it doesn't make sense a lot of the time. Like the college demon cult dream that I had to sacrifice some things just because there was a lot of stuff going on, and I was like, I can't make this work properly without it being like a really over-the-top story, so I'd have to like split everything. Like the two characters I showed, the unicorn dude and the girl in the pink hoodie, like, they don't really make any sense with that story, but they showed up in the dream in a different part. It wasn't related. It was just, you know, I fell back asleep after I wrote all that stuff down, and then that's what I dreamed about. But yeah, like, sometimes you're gonna have that happen. Another thing to note is to take your time when developing these characters and the stories, because sometimes the ideas take a while to like marinate in your head, since these are usually bizarre plot lines that happen. So it won't initially click with you right away, and when you're trying to figure out how these characters are going to work, since dream logic is so all over the place. So give yourself patience when writing out these characters, you know, just draw them out, give them some time to sit there in your head, let other things come to you, you know, get some other inspiration outside of that, because that's usually what I do. I usually will get outside inspiration from like my Pinterest or maybe a piece of media that I like, and that's actually a very important thing. The reason why I have a lot of weird dreams is because of the media I consume. When you consume certain types of media, it does affect your dreams. I'm not like a dream scientist or whatever, but like, I have noticed that when I watch certain shows or certain things before I go to sleep, they do show up in my dreams. And also just be mindful like what you see or hear or what you think about during the day, because it will affect you at night. It may not be all at once. It may be something from like 6 years ago, or maybe something that happened like yesterday. Like, your subconscious is very weird. I've had dreams about like people and places I haven't been to in ages, just because like my subconscious just threw that in there just because, you know, it's really odd. Or I've noticed that a lot of the dream settings that take place are just amalgamations of places I've been to before, because your subconscious is basically creating like this fictional world that's ever shifting to entertain your brain for the evening. So you gotta roll with it. That being said, if you want like dreams that are more crazy, don't actively seek out anything that's like scary, because I don't know how people's brains work. Everyone's different, but like, you know, don't like see anything that's like too scary before you go to sleep, because that might give you nightmares if you're like a sensitive person when it comes to like nightmares. But if you're someone who can handle it, then I guess. But generally speaking, you should be good. But you know, dreams are very unpredictable, so I don't know how frequently you have nightmares. If you're someone who doesn't, that's great, and if you're someone who does, you gotta be extra careful with the media that you consume. And also, you can't really force weird dreams. They just sort of happen randomly. Like, you could just go to sleep on a random Tuesday night and have the most wacky, bizarre, inspiring dream ever. Like, these dreams usually cannot like come to you on demand unless you want to lucid dream, but I don't know how to do that, so this is not a lucid dreaming tutorial. This is just how I get inspiration from my OCs from dreams. That's a totally different thing. Lastly is to take a lot of like creative liberties with the characters that you see in your dreams, because dreams usually are kind of vague in terms of how visuals are. I mean, unless you have like a really, really vivid mind. But you know, if you see something in a dream and you're like, I don't like this idea, or I want to do something different, then just do it. Like, you don't have to feel stuck to the original idea. You can change things up a little bit. I feel like sometimes people might think that they have to stick to it completely, but no, if you don't like something, you can admit it. You can do something different. And when it comes to designing characters for my dreams, I usually will like take a lot of creative liberties with things. Rarely will I see something in the dream that's like super concrete visually. Like, I have to do a lot of the work myself once I'm awake, and like looking for inspiration for like their outfits and their hairstyles and all that. Like, that is usually the hardest part, aside from like their backstory, because the backstory can be easy because everything's there, but it's just making sure everything makes sense is the hard part. So just don't put too much pressure on yourself. OCs inspired by dreams can be really fun and really inspiring, but they're very spontaneous, so don't use this as like a reliable source of OC inspiration. It's very spontaneous. It's like a shooting star. But for me, I guess it's not too rare. I seem to have a lot of weird dreams. I don't know why, but I do. That's always been like my thing, I guess, since childhood, and I don't mind it. I rarely have nightmares, but when I do, I usually try to forget them. But most of my dreams are pretty nice, pretty fun for the most part. But yeah, so I hope this was helpful in some sort of way. This was just a silly video about dreams because I've been having a lot of weird dreams lately, getting a lot of inspiration, so I figured I might as well talk about it. But with that said, I'll see you quacks later.